Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're located. Welcome to this event. And for those here on the East Coast and the States, feel free that it's 3:30 on a Friday afternoon. So feel free to grab a beer out of the refrigerator and enjoy the presentation. For those that may be across the pond or someplace else, and if it's early morning, you might want to wait until a little bit later to do that. Or maybe an Irish coffee would suffice. So listen, we really appreciate you attending. This is in the first of our series, and really our goal here is to just hopefully give you a few ideas of things that you should be doing and thinking about when you're working with your clients, and a way to build closer strategic relationships with them. With that, I'm going to go over to the presentation itself, and we'll get started here. So I call this really developing clients for life, right? And it's about building, again, strategic relationships, building those close relationships. And we'll talk about why that's so important. But boy, have we been on a roller coaster the last 9 months. When you think of everything that's happened to us, no matter where you're located, it has really been a challenge, both personally and professionally. And it's something that hopefully, as we see the vaccines come out, that we see that there's a light that will help us get there. But what I would start with is that, it's been everything from our personal relationships, the way that we interact with our families, the way that we're trying to continue to have those relationships, but having to be from afar, that's been such a challenge. To understanding the stock market and what's happened there, and understand that, gosh, I wish I could have figured this out, right? But as we see the stock market go up, and we think, how in the world, because of all the indicators that we have and the challenges that we have, but it continues to do that. But I would submit to you, if you go back to 2005, when you think about the benediction of the Pope and what the crowd looked like at that point in time, and then you look at today, or not today, but if you go to 2013 and look at what the difference in technology is. Look at the way that everything is lit up, and the way that people are now using these mobile devices that were out, and iPads, and how they were now communicating with people that they never did before. And to just recently into 2020, and the blessing that the Pope gave to no crowd whatsoever, and the importance of that we have. So you can just tell the challenges and the things that we're going through. And what I would start with here, as you think about what we've been through, where we are today, and what we're trying to go through, and think about that as this virus first came out, that we were in the fear zone, right? Everybody was grabbing toilet paper, and people were, hoarding things to. People were on really, their emotions were running high, to moving to a learning zone about how do we adapt now, right? Of wearing masks, of how do we interact with people. And what I hope for everyone that's on this call right now is that you're in that growth phase of it, right? That you're thinking about the things of where you're going to be in a year from now, and that you're more in a happy place of the way that you want to work with people, that you've looked at your patients, of the way that the way that you're interacting with people, and understanding that, listen, we're still learning in the process, and what we're trying to do now is, again, over a certain period of time. But what I would submit to all of you is that as we look at going into this year, that we recognize that the first 3 to 6 months, maybe even 9 months, we're still going to be in this virus, but it doesn't mean that we have to stop what we're doing. We there?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So, and we got to be real though, right? We've gone through businesses closing, all because of the virus and the challenges that they've run into. And then you think about now about where we are, to where how many businesses won't survive this, right? And one of the great things about what we do is that we offer solutions that will help companies be more efficient and productive, and reduce costs to help them survive. But that's the thing that every company is looking at right now. How can I do something different? And In the words of Winston Churchill, who said, hey, when you're going through hell, go through it. And that may be a little dramatic, but in a sense, it is true. But we can go through this and we can come out the other end of it. But what I'd also submit to you is that as you look to do this in 2021 and what you're trying to accomplish, you shouldn't be just trying to survive, but you need to thrive in the way that you work with your customers and the relationships that you build with them. It should be in a way that you're going to help them thrive in their business. Because when I mentioned about who's going to survive and who's not in business, it's about your customers and building those relationships and bringing more value to them to help them succeed in what they're doing. And when you help your customers succeed, guess what? You will succeed. The more that you help your customers succeed in what they're doing, the more value you're bringing to them, the more closely you'll be tied to them, and they will be clients for you for life. But as we look at this and we talk about the 3, the 6, the 9 months out, the one thing I would tell you is in the rush to return to normal, use this time to consider which parts of normal are worth rushing back to. And that's true. When you think about it, there's things that we did before that as we go into the new normal that we may not want to do. The way that we maybe leverage technology and the way that we interact with our customers is something that is going to absolutely be a big part of it. Making sure that we can still bring the value, but maybe in a remote and type of environment. The way that we want to work with them could be completely different. The way we collaborate with them may be completely different than what it was before. And to do that, though, one of the things I would recommend to you, and I would ask each of you that as you're looking at this picture, I'm going to ask you, how many trees do you see? I've had people guess 100, 500, even 1,000. And actually what I can tell you is this is what's called a panda tree. And this panda tree has one root system for this entire grove of trees. And if just one of these trees gets infected, they all die. And so when you look at building these relationships with your customers, one of the things that you need to clearly look at in building that is that it takes not just yourself, but other people in the organization to build that up, to build strategies up with them. And if one of the members of the team doesn't do what you set out to do for your clients, it will fail. So it takes everyone working, as the old saying, it takes a village, right? It's the same type of thing here that we're talking about, is building that up in a way that everybody has their role in customer service, and it's not just one person that's involved in that. But to understand that, really what you need to do is first of all, you need to understand where you are, because if you don't understand where you are, you're not going to know where you're going. And so if you don't know where you're going, you may get off on the wrong exit. You may be going in a completely different direction. You may wander around lost, right? So you got to truly understand when you look at your customers, you have to be realistic about where you are today with your customers, what kind of relationships you have with them. Because if you don't really understand that clearly, you're not going to know how to put a strategy in place. And that's what really we're talking about, is building that strategy up, right? Understanding what the objective is of what you're trying to accomplish, and then putting that strategy in place to make sure that all the pieces are moving in the right direction. And it's not just thinking about the next step, but it's also thinking about 3 and 4 and 5 steps further out of what you're trying to accomplish. Really, we're talking about putting all the pieces together, right? We're talking about each one of these is going to have an impact on the business. Each piece is part of what you're going to do to provide to your clients in the way that we build this out, and the way that you need to look at your clients. The first step in doing this is categorizing your clients. And by that, what I mean is think about this in a 4-quadrant. You really got, number one, you've got those clients that I would put into a red category, clients that are maybe that you've been doing business with maybe for years. Maybe you've offered them a special discount to do a certain volume with you, but guess what? You're only getting a little bit of their business, and they're actually, for the services and everything else you're providing, they actually could be costing you money. You really need to take that time and analyze that and be realistic about it. understand that it's not just the margins that you're providing, right, or the margins that you're getting from that client, but it's also when you incorporate in all the other expenses that may be involved. I worked with one client that they had just one customer out in one area. And so every time they ordered something, and it was always a small order, they had to have a truck run out to this other area where there were no other drop offs that they needed. What we identified was they were losing money on that one account because of just the small revenue that they were generating from it. That even though the margins were decent, it was the additional expenses that were really hurting them. So think about that with your clients today. There's so many of these that we have out there that for whatever reason we have provided discounts, we provided extra services with a promise of more business, and we're not getting that. So we're always afraid to go in and cut those off, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. You got those customers that are on the edge of that, right? That maybe have the potential to do a lot more business with you, but they're doing very little with you. And so those are ones that you really need to look at. Can we move them up the quadrant? Can we get them into a different mindset of what they're doing with you, how much business they're giving you? What's the strategy that you could put in place to get them there? But that strategy needs to come with KPIs and litmus tests that says, if they don't achieve that, then we know that we need to put them into a different grouping. The third area that I look at are those customers that are actually pretty good customers for us. They've done business with us for years. We're making a pretty good margin on them. We're doing a pretty good amount of business with them, but we also see the potential for so much more. And so those are ones that we really want to be strategizing on and really looking at ways that we can grow that business and do more with it. And then finally, in that fourth category that I look at, I'm looking at the ones that are really doing a lot of business with us today. We've got great relationships with them, but we haven't really taken it to the next level to make sure that we've tied them down. So I'm going to back up, and I forgot to mention in that third category that category are ones that, by the way, you may be doing a pretty good amount of business with them, that you got a pretty good relationship, but they're also very susceptible to leave you because of the fact of the pricing and everything else, that somebody else may come in and offer them a better price, and that they would leave you because they don't see the added value that you're bringing to them. So in my mind, those are the ones that I am probably the most nervous about in my business, because those are ones that are actually pretty profitable for me that I could lose. My accounts that are really doing the volume, I've got those relationships with. I hopefully have gotten those where I'm tying them down and I've got it close together. And I know before they would ever leave me that we would have a frank discussion about what's going on. So I would tell you that third category is the one you always want to be more concerned about, because the first two categories, if you lose those accounts, the first one really wouldn't hurt you. The second one, not so much, right? So you see how you want to break that down. But as you start looking at customers and what they ask for, and you have to understand some of the challenges that you deal with, right? Understanding what the client really wants.
Yeah, I was looking for something more detailed and simple. Something more clear and less sharp, like soften the edges. I think you can just round the pixels and it'd be fine. The pixels are the small. You can't round. I can make this purple more royal. What do you mean? These colors. What do you call them again? Complementary. Yeah, complementary colors. They don't seem to go together. What are your brand colors? Purple, blue, and clear. Clear? Crystal. What?
See, this is my fault. I was thinking less of a rectangle and more of a long square.
Right. Well, this is just a mock. Once you sign the contract, I'll do more designs.
I'm sorry, a contract? Look, a contract would just make me feel obligated to pay you.
Just reviewing your designs, we were hoping for less of a dark gray, more of a light.
Next message.
We're just going to go with something my daughter found on Google.
Next message.
I took your mock-up home for my wife.
My son, the one that he's sitting down.
My dog didn't really care for it.
Can you help protect our site from viruses and sperm?
I was wondering, can you make this go viral without affecting other computers?
Did I hire you to be done by what's possible?
There is no deadline, but we need it by next Monday.
Maybe next week. Next month?
I have to pay you?
Instead of cash, how about I give you muffins?
Free chicken wings, that's shenanigans.
Gift certificate to Bed Bath & Beyond.
If you buy milk.
So I bring that up, and I always find that funny. And the fact is, though, is understanding what our customers' wants and needs are sometimes can be very challenging and difficult. And so we have to recognize that and sort of come over and overcome that in many ways as we're working with them. As you look at the way that you want to build these relationships, the biggest thing that you want to do is you want to get away from just being having your people just be in sales versus becoming strategic. And by that, what I mean is strategy. When you think about it in sales, it's narrowly focused. It's on just one thing. It's about creating and capturing a specific opportunity. Compared to strategic account management, is really about a broader focus. It's on creating value for the account over and above what the specific opportunity is. It's about a long-term strategy that you're putting together. It's about value co-creation, customer satisfaction, improvement, right? So it's much more than just getting the sale. The time frame of it, of course, is much longer in a strategic area compared to a sale that is typically focused on how quickly can we get it done. The team that it takes, I mentioned that at the very beginning about the resources you need to bring to the table and the different areas that we want to focus in on versus in a sale, you're just trying to get it done as quickly as possible. And then you're also looking at, whether or not, if you want to put a label on it about what can I sell them today versus what value can I create? And so think about that. The more value you create, the more that, of course, they will buy, or you're just trying to sell them. And then you got to think about it from the mind of the buyer. I was dealing with one client, and they talked about the fact that he felt like his customer was very defensive in everything that he said and wouldn't provide me and wouldn't share information with me. I said, well, why do you think that is? He goes, well, he thinks I'm going to use it against him. I said, are you? He goes, yes. Well, gosh, think about it. If the sales rep felt that way, imagine how the buyer felt. So understand that means what you're looking at versus going in and building a strategic relationship where you're openly and working with them collaboratively about what you offer and understanding clearly what their needs are. Or another way to look at it is really becoming really more strategic than tactical, because tactical is just about short term versus strategic being long ball of everything that you're trying to do, making the customer the priority, being in front of them to truly help them in everything that they do. And so look at that very carefully as you look at this about the way that you want to build those relationships, right? Make sure to invest the time and the energy to understand everything that the customer is going to understand their industry. Spend the time to invest in understand that the industry that they compete in to see what's new that's coming out. A couple of things that I'd recommend is set up Google alerts, right? Google alerts for those specific industries. So when something new comes out, it hits there. Share that with your customer. It's amazing when they see that you're doing that, how they think about you. So it means about building those relationships, personal relationships that will last a lifetime. I mean, I had a couple of customers come to my wedding many years ago, and it was because of the relationship that I built with them and the way that they looked at that. But if there's anything that I would say to you as you try to build these relationships and clients for life, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Let me say that one more time. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. You can know everything in the world, but until the client really believes that you have their best interest at heart, if the client really believe it's what I call with them, what's in it for me, that you're focused on what's in it for them, you'll never build the kind of relationships that you need to develop clients for life. You know, and I said that because here's the thing I would tell you is that they did this survey and they asked people, what was it that what customers really wanted from their vendor? And of course, they want people to understand problems, knowledgeable salespeople, focus on their satisfaction, make it easy to do business with, provide great support and the proper follow-up and services. But the number one thing, right, was about let me back up there. The number one thing on this was all about the value, understanding their business problem. That was the number one thing that was the thing that the customers wanted. Because guess what? It doesn't matter how much knowledge you have. It doesn't matter how much you try to provide customer satisfaction. Until you understand their business problems, you're never going to be able to apply the value of your solutions to them. Because the value of your solution is not what you perceive the value to be, it's the value that your customer perceives it to be. So if you truly don't understand their business problem, you're never going to be able to show it or reflect that value that you bring to them. Just a couple of things to do in that. Consistency is key, right? You want to always undercommit and overdeliver. You want to understand the value of what the customer expects or needs. We've talked a lot about that, about what that means. You need to understand their priorities. What is it? Have you really taken the time? And one of the very first things as you start looking at this is, do you have an NDA in place with your customer? Because when we're talking about this, you need to understand truly what their priorities are, what it is that they're trying to accomplish. And so it gives you the opportunity to really focus in on those things. Those are areas too that, by the way, will be very confidential in their manner, right? So you got to make sure that you offer that NDA in place and make that a mutual NDA, because, by the way, you ought to be sharing that same kind of information about where you as a company are growing and what we're doing and the markets and where we see that we can bring more value. And that's how you collaborate with them. So make sure that as you look at this, you understand their priorities, and you won't get that done until you really, where they feel very comfortable sharing that with you. So we've talked a lot about this, and you may say, well, yeah, I sort of get it, but you know what? You're talking about a lot of work. And why should you care? Well, there's a couple of things that you need to take in consideration. It costs 5 times more to obtain a new client than retain an existing one. 5 times more. The probability of selling to a new client is only about 5 to 20%. That's why you need a pipeline. If you're looking at your numbers and what you're trying to accomplish in your business and how you're trying to grow your business, keep in mind you're going to need 10x for every new prospect in your pipeline to get to a number, compared to 60 to 75% probability of selling to an existing client. I mean, those numbers are a huge discrepancy between them. Existing customers are 50% more likely to try a new product that you offer. And by the way, they'll spend more for it, right? They typically aren't going to be the ones that are going to beat you up on price. They're willing to take a risk. They're willing to, if you've built that relationship with them, they understand that. And so the other part of it is this: increasing customer retention, just 5%, can increase your profits for your business 25+%. Just 5% increase in customer retention can increase your profits by 25%. The problem is, though, is what we've seen is that most companies, in fact, they spend almost 3 times as much on an emphasis on new customer acquisition versus customer retention. That's what, 2.5 times, right? 2.5 times more money on new customers. Now imagine you're spending 2.5 times more to get new prospects that you're only going to close 5 to 20% on. So you can see where that breaks down, right? Less than 30% of companies even place 50% of their focus on customer retention. And 76% of companies believes the customer lifetime value is important, but they have no idea how to measure it. And so when you look at your customers, you need to be thinking about that. What is the long-term value that you could be getting from this customer? How can you build that relationship out? Have you broken down, when we talked about those categories, make sure that as you're breaking those categories down, what is the overall potential for that account? Thinking about all the areas where you're not selling your products and services into that you could be. So be thinking about not just that, you got to be thinking outside the box of where you can expand into other areas of the marketplace with that account. And as I like to say too, is, we seem to focus so much time singularly on those people that will always meet with us. How much hallway selling do you do? In other words, hallway selling is what I call when you're walking down the hallway and you pass 3 offices, and the people in those 3 offices have the ability to maybe buy some of your products and services, but you walk by them every time you go to that business to go meet with the same person that you met with last month and the month before and the month before. Step out of your comfort zone and look at where you can expand into these different areas of the business to build that up. Build and ask your contacts, the ones that you provide a great service to, the ones that believe that you are a trusted advisor to them, a business partner to them. Ask for their help to penetrate other areas of the company. Starts with building customer loyalty, right? We've talked about that you want to build that loyalty with those customers as you start expanding out, and that's what will drive everything else. I've asked a lot of people to be references for me over the years. And what I can tell you, as I've looked to grow my business over the years and asked for references, I can tell you this: no one has ever told one of my prospects, "Oh, I love doing business with David because he gives me the best price." And I can submit to you that none of yours do that either. People never really look at the price being what does it. They look at the service, they look at the value, they understand that's why they'll be a reference for you. That's why they'll refer. That's how you build that customer loyalty. So one of the ways to get started with that is say what you mean what you say, and let your words and actions match. So I'm not sure how each one of you may have your sales organization set up differently, or maybe your customer service team set up differently, but you need to make sure that however you set that up, that you do it in a way that whatever you say is what you're doing, and that your words match your actions. If some of you may have where your salespeople take care of the accounts, look, some salespeople are not good at that. They're good at getting new business, but they're not good at maintaining those long-term relationships. If you see that, identify it and figure out look at a different strategy of a customer support rep, a customer account manager, something of that nature that will help support that, because eventually those people will leave you if you haven't continued to build that relationship. And that relationship can't be just every time you want to sell them something. You have to have a consistent message that you're delivering to them. Set up quarterly reviews with them. Make sure that you're meeting with them on a consistent basis about the value, what's working, what's not, and so that they understand that. Create SLAs, right? Service level agreements as to what you're providing, and make sure that when you meet with the client that you're reviewing those SLAs and what you've achieved. If you haven't achieved them, guess what? You need to face up to that and figure out a way to get over that. But it's really important that you're doing that on a quarterly basis so that they truly understand. Of course, right now we're not able to do that in person, but you can still do that virtually. So it really brings a lot of big questions, right, about the way that you want to look at things. We talked about this a minute ago, and I talked about those first accounts, the ones that I call the problem accounts, the ones that are in that low category. And I can tell you just from experience, they will absolutely consume your time. They will absorb much of what you do. And it takes away and it distracts from your mission of building these strategic relationships with these customers and building these clients for life. So you need to identify those problem accounts. And we talked a little bit about how you want to do that. You want to understand where they fit, what they do, right? Of where you see the opportunity, that whether it be the pricing that you provided, the services that you've provided, that when you see that they're not there, you do need to either, and figuratively, really look at firing the customer, right? That is a pretty profound statement, firing a customer. But if that customer is absorbing resources and also hurting your margins and affecting your business and is not profitable for you, it's something that you need to do. But you got to do it in a way that is respectful. You want to do it in a way that that the client, and you don't want to ever put them into a bind that you immediately say, we're going to stop doing business with you. You want to give them alternatives. I love the fact you can always use it. It's not you, it's me. And so you want to make sure that you put that out there in a way that gives them the opportunity to understand why. You may want to look at it and say, well, I don't feel comfortable firing a customer. Well, then put requisites on that customer. Make sure that you understand what those requisites would be, that we'll continue to do business with you, but we can't afford to continue to provide this kind of pricing. We can't continue to provide this kind of service. Or you put volume pricing agreements out there that says, hey, okay, we'll continue to do business, but we need this kind of volume, because many times the clients will commit, oh yes, we'll start doing that with you. And they never did. So if you're going to accept that, restructure your agreement with them in a way that says, okay, this is how we'll continue to do business. Raise the price to where you can accept it and where you still make a money off of it, and still provide them the flexibility of, look, if you want to give us, if you don't want to make us your second or third provider and you make us your first provider, that will provide you a better price for that. And that's how you're going to start building those relationships further along as you go through that. So as you look at next steps, the things that I would tell you to think about, and we talk about this, is think about the fact of working with your customers, right? Of creating those next steps, creating the relationship, creating how you're going to get there. The one thing I've seen companies do when I've talked about this, they said, okay, we're going to go do this strategic relationships. We're going to go build this relationships with these clients. And the first mistake they make, they never tell the client. You need to have a candid conversation with your client and say, we want to be your strategic partner. And here's what we're willing to commit. But by the way, it's an exclusive partnership. We're not offering this to every one of our clients. And we're going to do this for you, but in return, we need this. We need the quarterly meeting so we can understand better about what you're trying to accomplish. We need you to, be a referral for us. We need you to, and you get your list together of what you expect from them, as well as what you're going to give them above and beyond what you do for your other clients. But you got to have that relationship, because look, some of your customers are going to say, no, thank you. They don't want that. They don't want to invest the time and effort. The worst thing you can do is think that you're building a strategic relationship with an account and they don't even know it. So just think about that very carefully as you go forward. And as you do that, what you're looking for is to take that client that right, maybe a 3-star, maybe even a 4-star, and get them to a 5-star. And so I talked about that earlier, about creating SLAs that you put into place. You may, some people call it SLAs, some will call it KPIs, but create measurements that you and the client would agree to, that says, here's what you're expecting from us, and here's what we're going to deliver. And I will tell you, everything that you try to do is make sure that whatever that delivery is, it's something that you don't achieve that you exceed. Say that one more time. As you look to establish those KPIs, it's something that you want to set up, not that you achieve, but you exceed. So you want to, and it goes back to my comment earlier, you want to undercommit and you want to over deliver. When you do all these things, you become a trusted advisor to your account. They look at you completely different, right? They look at the value that you bring. They know that you're credible. They respect what you do. They know that you're reliable. And when they start looking at having a business problem, they're going to call you. They're going to invite you in to understand it, to see, do you have a solution that may help them? They're going to start looking at you completely differently than they would the other vendors that they may have. They're going to understand the integrity and the honesty that you bring to the table, that they know that you'll be transparent, that if you don't have a solution to help them, that you're going to be very upfront with them that you don't have that. You may even recommend somebody else for it. But they believe you that that's what you would do, that you're looking out in the best interest of them. So when you reach that point, it is something that is absolutely critical, and it is something that then you have a client for life. When you've achieved this, this is when you can honestly say, this is somebody that you're going to have. But keep in mind, once you get there, you can't rest on your laurels. You got to continuously, you should always be challenging yourself to continuously provide that quality of service and support to them and expand it in every way that you can. So that's about building those relationships, building them tighter and closer. Make sure that as you do that, I mentioned this earlier, that you've got alignment. So alignment, what am I talking about? I'm talking about that there's multiple people within the organization at senior level that's involved. You want to align your senior management with their senior management. When we talked about those quarterly meetings, yeah, you maybe not be able to get your CEO every quarter, but maybe you have the quarterly meetings that are at a more of a local level, and then every 6 months at an executive level. In the larger corporations, you may only be able to get that meeting once a year. I did a lot of work with FedEx and Rob, the CIO there. We could only meet with once a year. Needless to say, just getting an hour with him once a year was huge. But we built that relationship, and I brought my CEO in to meet with him personally to make sure the quality of services and support that we provided. Because of that, by the way, we were getting about $3 million a year from him. And it was because of that strategic relationship. Our products weren't the best in the market. We were actually considered probably 4th on the list. But because of the service and the relationships that we built, we were able to maintain that account. So always be thinking about this. You don't want to be just an email address, sending them just an email and something, right? Make sure when you summarize the next steps, how are you going to review, go back to those, make sure that you create those quarterly reviews with them, build executive relationships. You just heard me talk about that, right? And simply put, happy clients are more likely to make referrals and buy more from you. So we know that that is the case. The way that you're going to accomplish that is to be a true consultant to the customer. Talk about results with the customer. What is the value that we're bringing? Again, I mentioned this earlier and I'll say it again. You've got to be very, very careful that it's not your perception of the benefits you're providing them or the value that you're bringing them. It is their perception. And if you guys are not in alignment, guess what? You may think that you're doing a great job and that they're getting tremendous value out of it, and their perception is completely different. That means having that relationship to where you're sharing the right information. Be innovative, right? Bring credibility. Be that trusted advisor. Think outside the box of the way that you can help them. But also realize this. In the words of Mike Tyson, everybody's got a great plan until you get punched in the mouth, right? No matter what you do, guess what? Something will happen. You create a great SLAs for customer service and something happens and you blow it, right? And those things are going to happen. So always have contingency plans in place so that you can overcome those. And listen, when it happens, escalate it immediately in your own organization, relay that to your executives immediately. You've got to be the one that's got to be proactive to say, I'm on this. We understand there's a problem. Here's our action plan to help solve it. Because it's easy for everyone to have a great relationship and have this, kumbaya moments with clients when everything's going well. The true test of character is the way you react when something goes bad. That will tell the client what kind of relationship you've got. You need to have those contingency plans in place so that if something happens, that you can react to it as quickly as possible. So as we talked about the traditional approach, right? Prospect new business, fill the pipeline, pitch services, close the deal, rinse and repeat. That's how most traditional companies work. What I would submit to you is the way that you want to look at this in a value-added approach. Identify the customer needs, apply your solution to solve those needs. Yeah, close the opportunity through fair negotiation, but most importantly, quantify the benefits after the sale and provide excellent customer service. If you do that, you become you're not just selling to them, you're really treating them completely different. When you do that, you establish the trust and rapport, right? I've mentioned this 2 or 3 times now about validating and about the value that you bring. 5, 6, 7 times I've mentioned it. But you got to constantly validate that value. And the reason why that's important in your quarterly reviews that you want to do that is because they'll forget sometimes of where your solutions are, what the value is. So it is your responsibility to continue to remind them and validate what you're actually doing for them. So it's all about building these strong relationships with the clients. And so what I'm hoping is today, what I really wanted to accomplish is give you a lot of the building blocks that to help you succeed, to really look at the way that you can build these relationships up, because it is so important that you do that. And especially I think in this coming year, there's going to be a lot of transition. Companies are going to be looking at different vendors. They're going to be looking at what is their new norm and who can be the best provider for their new norm. We talked about that at the beginning. So you need to be looking at how can you help. Right now is the perfect time to be talking to your clients about how can we help, right? What are you doing over the next 9 months? How are you acting? How can we help you with that? What is the value that we can bring? So you want to be looking at how you build that up.